Good afternoon. I would like to show you a complete breakdown of my signature project that I've been working on over the past several months. I'm very proud of it, and I hope that you will be proud as well. So let's go ahead with talking about some of my pre-project data. Um, Before I came up with what my topic would be, it was important for me to gather information from others. And so we have a leadership team at our school, and I got them together and we talked about some overarching questions. I allowed them to complete a survey privately, and then we got together and talked about the results to begin the conversation around what were some issues that we needed to address, that we wanted to do better. So the questions that I included on the survey were, what do you think we're doing well to contribute to student learning? And then what can we do better? And then, of course, is there a data piece, or are there data pieces that reveal this area of improvement? Formative assessment was one of the things that was discussed. They said this was one of the data pieces that revealed that teachers were having to revisit lessons. Students were not mastering activities the way that teachers were expecting them to. And so a lot of teachers were saying that a majority of the time they were having to go back and do some level of reteaching or reviewing information. Also, the formative assessments were revealing an overdependence on the teachers, meaning that the students were not having enough productive struggle or student discourse. Um, it was more of a teacher centered classroom versus student centered, where you see students working on things together and talking through things with each other to arrive at their learning without being told what they needed to learn by the teacher. So that became evident in our preliminary conversations. Also, our summative data pieces revealed several things. We looked at STAR reading test scores. We looked at the district common assessments that we created as a district. And then we also looked at our ACAP tests. And when you look at the STAR data, and this was included in my previous report, it's just duplicated here. Uh, the results were very troubling, or very obvious. It looks like 85% of our students are not proficient, according to our STAR test data. So only 15% are reading at or above proficiency level, according to our STAR data. Also, when looking at common assessment grades, this is from the first 9 weeks, and this is data from Miss Parker's classroom. This was generally similar to our other ELA test scores, and so I used hers as just one example, rather than combining all of our totals. So I used Miss Parker's Gen Ed report, and then I also used the honors report. But if you will notice, the average score for Gen Ed students at the end of that first 9 weeks was only 55 points. Not good. If you look at the honors for her classes, slightly better. At least they're passing, but it's certainly not strong numbers. 66 is the median score for STAR testing, and that was conducted back in October. The ACAP reading data from March of 2021 revealed, and of course, this data is broken down between Gen Ed students, which is both grade level and honor students, and then special ed students, those with IEPs. So when you look on the left, you're going to look at the general population of students without IEPs, and you'll see that there's 55% are proficient according to ACAP, and then 37% are partially or moderately proficient in reading. And then of the gen ed population, it looks like about 7% is not proficient. So these results are showing a little bit better than the results that we got when we gave the STAR test a few months later, because STAR testing was done in October and this ACAP was done the previous March. And then if you'll notice, the special education numbers kind of flip-flop, and we have about 5% of our special ed students are proficient, which is a positive. We'd like that number to be larger. And then we have 70% of our students with IEPs are partially proficient, which there's a real opportunity there for growth, I see. And then, of course, we have, it looks like about 25% of our students with IEPs are not proficient. So there's another area for improvement. Something else that became evident in our conversations, our teacher leadership team, of course, was also made up of administrators and our instructional coach, our library and media specialist. And it was brought up that reading deficits lead to behavior problems. And we also talked about the fact that behavior problems lead to reading deficits. And so it's kind of a vicious cycle. But we noticed, we had the principal pull up some of our numbers, and we noticed that referrals year to date were up 8% from last year, but it was also 35% worse than last year's total numbers. So this was a really troubling number. Our discipline has really plummeted, or I guess you would say the referrals have dramatically increased in a very short period of time, partially due to COVID. But we can't really blame COVID. We don't want to put all the blame on COVID. But it is important to note that these children were coming out of school lockdown and dramatically different instructional practice, that they were not used to getting back to normal. And so I think maybe part of this problem is growing pains. But in the meantime, we have to address discipline referrals, and we also have to address this problem with reading comprehension. We would also note that reading deficits result in higher levels of absenteeism and vice versa. Students who are absent usually have a negative feeling about school in general. Many times those students are not performing well in school, and that's why they don't like school. But also, if students are absent a lot, it keeps them from performing well in the classroom, or it just keeps them from having every opportunity at meeting with success. So absenteeism is an aspect that needs to be addressed. And we defined absenteeism as students that had 5 or more absences in one grading period, which is a 9 weeks. So it was interesting to go in and look at certain students who we know were not proficient, and just about every one of them would fall into this absentee category of having 5 or more absences during the grading period. So absenteeism is an important aspect that needs to be addressed. But our identified problem became deficits in reading comprehension, and my project focus then became student literacy, improving reading comprehension scores of 8th graders at Austin Junior High. Now, I felt like it was important to just focus on one grade level. I'm an 8th grade teacher, but if I was the principal of Austin Junior High School this year, I still would have focused on one grade level at a time. Our eighth graders have a very different set of summative assessments than our ninth graders. And so I felt like it was important. I would feel like it would be important for us to address the eighth grade first, um, to see if we can improve their reading competency and then work with the ninth graders in year two. So, in formulating my analysis, the literary matrix became extremely important. And we were called upon to look at different areas, topics that would need to be researched and considered, so that we could inform our project with evidence-based information, to add credibility to our project. And the five areas that I focused in on were, of course, reading comprehension, literacy strategies, student discourse, behavioral problems, and then absenteeism. And all five of these are linked to the success or not success of reading comprehension. Some background information. This is the area of my presentation where I really feel like it's a strength because the articles that I read were extremely impactful, and they spoke directly to the points that were made in some of my initial conversations with my teacher leadership team. And the first one here is frequent formative assessment results, that required those revisiting lessons. That was one of the first things that came out of our meetings with the leadership team. And we talked about scaffolded learning, and how we really had to go back to that and really intentionally incorporate more tier two strategies into our classroom on a daily basis. And this was addressed in an article that I read from the Journal of Learning Disabilities, and it was entitled The Differential Importance of Component Skills on Reading Comprehension Test Performance Among Struggling Adolescent Readers. So it's important that we use scaffolding um, to build those students' reading strength and confidence when going into standardized test environments. The next point that I wanted to bring out was that increased student engagement using manipulatives often offers that added modality, increased retention, increased engagement, and results in deeper learning. And this article that I read was a case study in a science classroom where the teacher infused her classes with making models of things, doing lots of hands-on experiments, and it really resulted in improvements in language and also in reading comprehension. So, very excellent article indeed. The next point to bring out involves the tier two instruction. And it was a case study in a strategy that I had never heard of. And it's called the SQ3R, which stands for Survey, Question, Read, Recite, Review. And it allows students to get more information from complex text, and it teaches them to generate text-based questions, which we want to encourage their questioning ability so that our learning environments become more inquiry-based, which, of course, we know leads to deeper understandings. But the article that I read was really good. It was entitled Self-Questioning Strategy to Routinely Enhance Reading Comprehension. And again, it broke down this particular reading strategy and how it worked and how successful it was. And it was a very interesting read. Another article that I pulled from that was regarding student discourse came from a journal called Science and Children, and involved creating equitable learning environments for students to present their ideas. Even if they're incorrect ideas, it teaches them to move into to self-correcting and being able to allow them to continue active participation in discussions, because we all know that if an eighth grader gets something wrong or says something unacceptable in the realm of the public domain when we are conducting a whole class discussion, eighth graders will shut down very quick, and the learning ceases, and you will not get anything else from that student. So this was a powerful article about teaching teachers how to strengthen student discourse, um, making them feel safe. And it's not something that you can do on day one and then on day two, you're ready to go. This is a progression of practice and reinforcement and guiding and gradually getting students to this place. It's not something that happens overnight, because we all know students have to have confidence before they're willing to take risks. And so the whole notion of giving them time and giving them space and easing them into this process of stepping out and sharing their voice and creating the environment that it's okay to be incorrect, because being incorrect helps us further our inquiry and further our learning. And it's almost a good thing to speak out, when we don't have the perfect answer, because sometimes the best sharing comes from when students are just kind of struggling around a topic or an idea, and then we all kind of move in and discuss that notion, and so discoveries happen as a result of that. So I just thought that was an extremely engaging article. An article that I found that was interesting and impactful with regard to behavior had to do primarily with a case study on African American males. Our school is very diverse. We have a high percentage of students of color in our school. And so this article really piqued my attention, but it proved that something that we had talked about in our discussions was that, we needed to get better at parent and guardian communication, improving those relationships. But this article dealt with how to make positive communication, improving the communication to build those relationships, um, letting these parents know when there is something positive going on with students of color, so that you can, have them look forward to your phone calls rather than always dreading them. I thought that was a very impactful article. Also, our leadership team concurred that, and this is also with regards to behavioral issues, restorative discipline practice is needed to improve students' negative perceptions of school. The research that I read in this article from the American Education Research Journal, it showed that improving perceptions raises literacy rates, um, because students start to feel better about the school that they attend. They feel like they are supported, and that the teachers and the admins don't have it in for them, that they actually have a belief in their success. And so this was a great article that proves that point, using research and information that was gleaned from a couple of different schools. One of the articles that I wanted to highlight from my matrix had to do with absenteeism. We had concurred that strengthening relationships with the community, not just parents, but community partners, result in improved attendance and a more positive feeling about school. So, this particular article had to do with transformative school community collaboration. And it was a case study about a school that really focused in on creating partnerships and getting these community leaders into the schools to work with our kids to improve absenteeism, or I guess I should say decrease absenteeism, by helping students feel like they have some extra support and people that are cheering for them. Another important one about absenteeism. Um, we recognized as a group of teachers that to increase our attendance rates, we have to take a systemic approach. And this article showed how you could do it in a very cost effective way, which piqued my attention because anything I think a principal will want to really hone in on those things that are inexpensive or free strategies that don't cost anything to make a big difference. And so this article revolved around one school's strategies in addressing their chronic absenteeism problem. But they had a creative approach to daily check-ins, um, to see, how students are doing, talking about, giving students time to talk about what's going on in their lives, creating and participating in those relationship building activities while taking a close look at what is keeping them from coming to school and trying to address those problems directly to solve it, and offer some resources to families on how how to help them get their kids to school. Professional development, I think, is a critical element for success with any continuous improvement initiative. And more training is needed for my faculty and staff to improve teacher competency in literacy strategies across content areas. ELA teachers do a pretty good job of it, but we really need to focus on helping other teachers improve literacy based instruction. And we used SREB this year for this purpose. And I was lucky enough to be on that first cohort group. And so I utilized a lot of the things that I was learning straight from SREB. I was doing a lot of turnaround training with staff members and utilizing it in my graduate studies. But there was an article that I read about professional development in disciplinary literacy strategies, and it went hand in hand with a lot of things that the SREB was doing. And so I felt like it was a valuable article to use and to inform my plan. Another element of professional development was to give our faculty more training in instructional strategies that utilizes peer collaboration and more student talk discourse. And this was an interesting article that I read where a school used video to highlight curriculum embedded opportunities. Um, they went in, and some teachers agreed to allow other teachers to come in and video snippets of student interaction so that you could take that video back and break it down and talk about it and how you could do things differently in order to encourage more student discourse or more collegial student discourse. And so I thought that was interesting. It's kind of it reminded me of instructional rounds in a way. It also reminds me of national board certification. So that article I thought was very thought provoking because it got me thinking of how we could use that strategy at school to get teachers comfortable with learning using video. My action plan, the objective for my signature project was for 100% of eighth graders would demonstrate a minimum 20% increase in reading proficiency by the end of this school year. Now, you say 100% might be lofty, but I guarantee you, if I was a parent and I was looking at this goal and I only saw 70% of eighth graders, the first thing I would do was think, I wonder if my child is in that 70% or not. I believe in my heart of hearts that you should always want 100% of your students to be able to demonstrate um, what you are looking for. I think that that's how you are inclusive. That's how you maintain equity, because your goal is for all students, every single one, to be able to demonstrate at least a 20% increase. The implementation of my plan included and prepared teachers and school leaders for taking the needed steps to focus on improvement in a spirit of positivity and high expectations. I feel like it's a trickle down effect with school culture when you are implementing as a grassroots effort. And grassroots, I mean teachers, um, staff, faculty, and then it trickles down to students that way, coming, of course, from the principal first and foremost. But I feel like my implementation is systemic and makes a lot of progressional sense. My school mission has always been to partner with families and the community to inspire and prepare students to be productive leaders. And there is an inclusivity element to my action plan. I believe my plan includes all stakeholders, all parents, all community partners to support with encouragement and celebration and holding students to high standards and accountability. Staff participation. My plan includes a lot of staff participation. All the faculty and staff are going to work together to provide a rigorous curriculum in a safe, structured environment so that we can foster a positive, inclusive school culture. My plan is detailed. It features the steps to ensure exemplary research based teaching methods and organizational leadership that provides safety and structure. And it always places students in the best position for success. My goals, in my previous reporting on the reports that I submitted for previous classes, I have 3 main goals and then objectives to support those. My first goal was by October, all students in grade 8 would be taught using the strategic teaching method. Objective 1 would be, how I would carry out my goal would be: first, students would need to be able to read and internalize the before, during, and after strategies, the daily learning target, or you might call it the student friendly outcome, and also they need to be able to discuss the reading and writing standards on a level where they can say it back in their own words, showing you that they understand the Tier 3 vocabulary. The second objective for goal number 1 is for students to complete tasks in small groups and start encouraging that discourse and collaboration. Goal number 2, ELA teachers would collaborate with grade level and other content area teachers. New teachers will collaborate with mentor teachers. Um, the objectives that support this goal: first of all, teachers would conduct instructional rounds twice during the year, noting their findings, meeting to discuss, and then also I would add going back and implementing some new ideas that they glean from these observations that they make in the classrooms. The second objective that supports goal number 2 is common planning. It's important to have that in order for true collaboration to take place. Goal number 3, to create and implement a high-quality professional development opportunities for teachers. And I would do that by having the instructional coach facilitate the rounds and lead the PD sessions, along with using other district curriculum experts. I would also expect to provide PD in strategic teaching, in student engagement, and in reading strategies to my staff. And then also, I would want to incorporate the community by contacting the Decatur Youth Services director about an after-school reading program as to offer as a community resource. My action plan has 4 basic steps. Of course, there are many other sub-steps in the process, but these are the 4 main ones. Step 1, the teacher leadership team was assembled. Then the faculty meeting to introduce the improvement plan. Step 3 was the professional development for the strategic teaching model. And then step 4 is the professional development and implementation of those instructional rounds. My timeline, of course, begins before school starts. Back in July, I would appoint my leadership team. I would also contact the middle school feeder principal and talk to him or her about literacy partnership. And I would probably do that during the principal retreat. Our district does that every year in July. In August, I would conduct and facilitate leadership team meetings. I would contact the Decatur Youth Service Director at that point in August about the possibility of doing some sort of tutoring program. And then in September, I would have a faculty meeting with embedded professional development. Also in September, I would want to gather a stakeholder committee, people that are interested in the Decatur Youth Services and have a love for our students. So it would be a blend of teachers, parents, um, community members, other members of the district leadership, maybe, to sit in on this meeting to discuss some of our hopes and dreams for improving our partnership with DYS. I would also expect to have the STAR test administration in September, and also in the classrooms, I would like to see the teachers teaching students the purpose of strategies so that they can start internalizing them during instruction time. Also in September, we would have a faculty meeting with more embedded PD. And then we would also have a PD intro to instructional rounds. And I would not do this one as a faculty meeting. I would do it as a maybe during planning, during a portion of planning time, so that teachers would not have to use their after school or before school time for a faculty meeting. I want to protect their time outside of school. October, I would want to do principal one-on-ones, teacher meetings. I had a principal that did this. I've only had one principal that has done this in the 18 years that I've taught school. And it was probably one of the most impactful things for me because I felt like that particular principal really cared about what I thought. He valued my opinion. He listened to my concerns. It was my time to share with him my thoughts, and I really felt like he was listening to me. One-on-ones are incredibly powerful, and I, as a future leader, plan on doing this. And, a lot of principals, I guess, back away from it because they think, oh, I have too many faculty members. I can't do that with every single person. But this guy was awesome. He scheduled it out. He sent the schedule to all of us and he stuck to it. And he was able to crank out 62 one-on-one meetings in like a 3-day period and still get his other work done because he was organized and focused. And it was a priority. And I felt like it paid off in large quantities as a result. But I would want to do principal one-on-ones in October just to touch base and get a thermostat reading of how my teachers are feeling and what kind of support I need to provide them at that point early on in the year. October is also the time when we have our first AB Student Honor Roll recognition. It's like a party that we have in the auditorium where we would utilize community donations and teachers and parents to come and help. And we just have a party in the auditorium for all those students to be celebrated. Also in October, we would have our common assessment, the district-wide common assessment, set up just like standardized testing scheduling would be. Also in October, we would have another faculty meeting with Embedded PD, and we would also begin our instructional rounds and have a debrief meeting, and then the teachers would implement an idea that they learned from that first instructional round. If you'll notice, I don't have anything between October and January because November is typically a fast month. We have a week off at Thanksgiving, and I feel like it's unrealistic to try to plan anything um, strategically during that month. I think it's important for teachers to continue doing what they are doing and practicing that strategic teaching and implementing those instructional round ideas. So that then in January, we come back and have another honor roll party. We have common assessments. From the second semester, that second 9 weeks. Also in January, we have a faculty meeting with more Embedded PD. February, we have another faculty meeting with Embedded PD. Again, not much else going on in January and February because we are focusing on making sure that our students are ready for ACAP testing, and so it's critical that we don't overwhelm teachers with a lot of extras during this time. We just continue monitoring what we are currently expecting and look for all those positives so that we can recognize those teachers publicly for all the good things that they are doing in their classroom and all the good things that we see when we go into their classrooms. February is also a time when we do our next instructional rounds day with a debrief meeting, and then the teachers go back and implement another new idea that they've learned, and come back and collaborate and talk about how it went. April, again, March is going to be filled with finishing up with test preparations and spring break. March is a really fast month. It's kind of like November. So I'm not going to add anything strategic in that month. April, we have another student recognition and the third and final common assessment. And then ACAP testing happens in April. Also, my second one-on-one meetings with the teachers, I feel like that's good practice to try to do it twice a year. That's really not asking a lot to be with your principal one-on-one in a formal meeting only twice. But my principal was able to pull this off, and I feel like it's a practice that I want to initiate with my teachers. May, we have STAR testing where we're taking that final measurement to see what kind of growth we've had over this year. And we're also planning for the end of the year Black Bear celebration. Changes and alterations that I would make, I would say that the one thing that my timeline is missing that I need to incorporate is more strategies and specific action steps for improving attendance and discipline, so that all areas of improvement are addressed. I feel like my timeline is very instructional heavy, and I needed to also incorporate those items of improving attendance and improving discipline or reducing the number of discipline referrals would have been something I would need to work into my timeline. My post-project data, uh, when you looked at the end of the year at formative assessments and you asked teachers what they think about what they're seeing at the end of the year with their formative assessments, they can all confirm that there was an increase in student engagement, as well as improved behaviors in the small group norms, because students are now comfortable with small group instruction and student centered instruction. The discourse with students has improved, and deeper understandings of various types of texts is evident now in looking at formal assessment. STAR testing showed a significant gain. 14% of the eighth graders are at or above proficiency in reading, and 78% of the eighth graders showed growth, some growth. Now, I can't say that it was 20% or more, but 78% showed growth between the August test and the April May test. So I feel like that was uh, a victory. The ACAP test results, however, were not available for analysis because those were not back yet before school was out. The next step for me will be to review this data as soon as it becomes available to see where it compares to the STAR test data and to see how it compares to last year's ACAP test data. Also, the impact of um, what I learned from my post project data and the connections of how it relates back to what I saw was a need that needed to be addressed. But creating and supporting opportunities for teachers and stakeholders to be able to work together is the key to success for my particular project. Breaking teachers into small groups provides a less intimidating environment. It provides more opportunity for engagement and learning. And ironically, it's the same with students. As human beings, we need to learn in in a curious way where we are basing our learning on inquiry and discovery. And so we learn better as teachers like this, just like we are asking our students to learn this way. So I feel like there's a real irony there. But training teacher leaders in providing constructive feedback also reduces negativity, and it keeps the focus on school improvement while developing the professionalism of your staff. It's a win win. Trust building is the glue that connects all improvements, because if your staff trusts you, they will move mountains for you. The strength of my plan lies, I think, in the classroom visits and the follow up activities for, the opportunities for reflection. Doing these types of things builds collective responsibility and a commitment to the plan and improved communication. Next steps. I feel like it's important to, of course, review the results data with stakeholders, reporting it, identifying items that might need to be improved or changed or strengthened. And I might do this with my assistant principals and instructional leaders. And then I would probably have the same activity done with the teachers, so that we can collectively pool all of the items that we discover that might need to be tweaked, changed, dropped, or strengthened for the following year. And then we also need to determine professional development needs for the year two, um, to see what else teachers need. And that would come from the one-on-ones that I had with teachers, and it would also come from surveys that I conduct to get teachers to document some things that they would like to have more of. Also, adding professional development for the Renaissance Learning Platform. I did hear some teachers telling me at the end of the year that they wished they knew more about how to use the STAR test data. A lot of them were not familiar enough with how to read their data. And I feel like STAR would be a more important instrument if teachers um, felt like they have more of a mastery of it. Also, taking reading and presenting to the next level in year two by adding the writing skills to our focus would also be impactful for future plans. And some of my final thoughts in thinking about this project, first of all, I'd like to say that I'm quite proud of the work and the process by which I took to move, uh, an imaginative scenario from start to finish, but using real, actual, practical data and research and planning. It's extremely impactful, and this process is going to follow me through all of my years of leadership. Um, it's a valid. The Action Research Project is so critical to leadership, and I think it is the link that differentiates um, leaders. And I think that while we do see vast improvement in our literacy this year, which we did, I was not able to implement instructional rounds because I am not, in a position to be able to do that. Um, but I was not able to implement any of the discipline strategies or the attendance strategies. And I do believe wholeheartedly, though, that if these were implemented, that success of this project would have been certain. So I hope you've enjoyed my presentation, and I hope that you are inspired by it, at least a fraction of how much it has inspired me.